Hey, this is Alex Webster, and you're geeking out to Gear Gods. Yeah, for the new album, A Skeletal Domain, we recorded at Audio Hammer Studios in Sanford, Florida with Mark Lewis, and that was the first time we'd worked with him. And there were a few things we did differently. For me, from a bass perspective, the main difference is I went direct, and I used two pedals. Well, not pedals, but like DI preamp kind of things. I used an Aguilar tone hammer, and basically I was going into that first, and then out of that into a Dark Glass Microtubes B7K, which is also a preamp, but it's got an overdrive built in. So the tone hammer has an overdrive, but I didn't use it. I used that as my clean channel. I did affect the signal, like I EQ'd the signal slightly before I went into the B7K, and then out from that, I used the overdrive on that one. So it was a blend of a clean bass DI and an overdriven bass DI, rather than miking up a cabinet or something, which I had done in the past. And really, I'm very, very happy with how the sound turned out. I mean, with bass, being able to go DI, it's always been a little bit easier than with guitar. With guitars nowadays, you do have things like Axe effects and Kempers and things that can really emulate a speaker well digitally. With bass, you have stuff, like the Dark Glass B7K or the Tech 21 Sans amp. Those are all things that have been around for a long time, and they're analog, and they sound like a killer cabinet mic'd up. So this is not something new, what I'm saying. Like, it's new for me in the studio. I've done it at home a bit, but in the studio, this is the first time I've gone all direct. Worked out fine, but it's not necessarily a new thing. People have been recording bass direct almost as long as there's been bass guitars. On tour, I have a few different things. Like, I didn't mention that in the studio, just to go through the rest of my gear and that, I'd been using a Spector Euro 5LX, 5-string Spector bass made in Czech Republic, killer instrument. I've used that for many of our recordings, and I use that again. When I tour, I use my own signature Spectors, which are just a little bit different, and I like their tone for live. So that's what I'm using out here, and those have some blood on them and some stuff like that too, So yeah, those are great. Got EMG pickups in all of the basses that I use. Out here live, I have a Aguilar rig. That's my amp. DB751 head, a DB810 cabinet. Also have a DB412, but I usually don't run that. That's going to be way too much power, really. It's nice to know that I have it if I need it, but most of the time I don't need it. I bring along that for my pedals and stuff. I just have a radial bassbone OD. That's like kind of a control center where I can go out to a tuner. I can adjust levels for two different basses because we switch basses from tuning to tuning. They're each sound a little different, have different output levels, so I can adjust that on there. That way what's going to the mixing board is the same level, And then I also use that Dark Glass B7K live. So in my pedal board right now, it's a radial bassbone OD, and I use that also as a clean channel. Again, I do the clean channel, dirty channel. The B7K is the dirty channel. I have a tuner in there, and that's it. Pretty much what's going to the mixing board at this point, I'm not even miking my cabinet. That's more like just stage volume and for people right in front of the stage. What's going to the mixing board are those two DIs. So it's not that different from my studio setup. The B7K being the really common thread, and that's a big part of my sound, is that pedal, in combination with the basses I use. It's very consistent. I use DR strings. I use stainless steel strings. I feel like they have the best ping to them, and bass players will know what I'm saying when I say that. They just, especially when they're brand new, it's just this really good high end, and just it's what I think it's what every bass player is looking for, is that kind of I don't know, the ping. There's probably a scientific way to talk about that, but I don't know it. But yeah, DR high beam, stainless steel, they're excellent. I use for the tuning. We do two tunings in this band. One of them is a half step down, and one of them is a minor third down. 1.5 steps down. So for that really low tuning, I use 130 to 50. 130 being the lowest, and the low B, which is actually a G sharp at that Yeah, G sharp at that point, and for the other tuning, it's just a half step down. So the low B's in A sharp, I use a 125 to 45 set for those. So I kind of try to adjust to hopefully make the tension similar. That and also the setup of the instrument, I try and get them to be set up similarly so that when I change, there's not that big of a difference in how I have to play, even though the gauge is different and the tuning's different.